Yeah, welcome, Kavina. Please start. Please start.
Tell me a story. These could be four simple words, but very profound, and they invoke so many emotions and memories within ourselves. And that's the power of these four words, which is tell me a story. Humans, if you look at, are naturally storytellers. We can't help but tell stories because they are the rock solid fundamental to our existence. And my childhood was also enriched by them. And I'm sure if I talk to you, your childhood has also a lot of stories told by your parents, your grandparents, right? When we grew up, our childhood was completely captivated by enchanting tales spun by our fathers. And we have talked about the field mouse, courageous turtle, tortoise, hare, and whatnot. And if we go to our grandfather, he talks about those gritty wartime stories painted with vivid images of resilience, bravery, and our childhood was always spun around the anecdotes and a lot of colorful characters which still linger in our memory, right? Long after even the tales have faded themselves. So that is the power of storytelling. And that is the power of the value system which was brought into our lives through storytelling. And today, we will look at how this powerful tool called storytelling can be taken into our workplace and we become more powerful with just using the simple tool called storytelling. Today, you will walk away with why you should be using storytelling as your tool for your everyday work, and as well, what is the tips and techniques to be starting to use storytelling. I'm going to give you certain tips as to start using storytelling in your everyday use. And one of the use cases by Steve Jobs, one of the greatest storyteller of the era, how he used storytelling to launch his product launch. So we'll also deep dive into that. And finally, we will be having the tools and techniques of using storytelling at workplace every single day. So that's what we will do today. So let's start by understanding what storytelling really is. At its core, if you look at storytelling is the art of conveying informations, emotions, and experiences through a narrative format. It can involve sharing personal anecdotes or you can even create fictional tales, but the intent is very same. To connect with others and communicate ideas in a way that it can resonate. It has been told that storytelling is the greatest technology that humans have ever created. Why are stories powerful? Well, stories have been an essential part of a human culture since the beginning of time. They help us make sense of the world around us, and it starts giving meaning to the experiences that we have had. When we create stories or when we hear stories from other people, what we do is we start creating mental images and we start in experiencing emotions and relating our own experiences to what we are listening. If you take an example of your movie experience, aren't we people who laugh when the characters on the movie laugh? Don't we cry when they cry? And there's a whole lot of emotions that we undergo similar to the emotions that the characters in the movie undergo. And that is how stories are powerful. The deep connection is what makes storytelling more effective. Now, let's take a look deeper into the workplace storytelling. And I'd like to share some statistics with you. Before that, let us understand that people think in stories and not statistics. And that's why we are going to today look at how we are going to make sense to the data and appeal it to people as stories because people can remember the stories than the facts in itself. Now let's look at certain statistics and what it tells about why we should be using storytelling at work. First one is the employee engagement. It has been told that organizations that use storytelling effectively experience up to 70% higher employment engagement. employee engagement. And this is a research coming straight from Harvard Business Review. Another one where we all are organizations which want the attrition rates to be really less. Story can Storytelling can be doing that wonders. If you're using more stories, then it means people resonate to the stories better and not facts. If you have to set a vision for the entire organization, use stories. People will resonate and stick with you longer than when you have to go on the stage and start telling the revenues and numbers, which doesn't even make sense to people. Participation and communication. 65% of employees say they are more likely to engage with their peers when stories are part of their communication. How authentic a leader can come across if they're going to share their story with the team, with the organization. That is when people will start participating with you and start communicating with you without any barriers. And another point is decision making. A study from Stanford University told has found out that stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. If you have to are in the decision making process and you will have to tell your decision making to the rest of the organization, use stories. People will understand and stick to your decision better when you use stories than going and directly telling the decision yourself. So, those are the statistics that will drive you stronger into storytelling as a tool at your workplace. Now, let's look at what is so special about stories. What's really happening in our mind, right? The neuroscience behind storytelling. Good stories surprises, engages, and they also make us feel, think, and reflect. That's what they say. And how? First is the emotional engagement. The moment we start telling stories, the listener hears the story and their emotional brain starts reacting. This means that when you tell a story, it brings out strong emotions and it helps the audience to connect at a very deeper level. The second is memory retention. As we saw, stories are 22 times more stickable with people. And why is it? Because the moment we are into storytelling activates the brain's sensory and motor cortices, making listeners feel the experience and the events described in the story. When they start feeling, it becomes theirs. Therefore, the memory retention is much better. And empathy development. So, what happens is there are mirror neurons. The moment you start depicting a story, the mirror neurons gets activated, and that's when I start mirroring the emotions of the other person. Have you gone very, very deep into the story where the person narrating is laughing and you are laughing as well? The person narrating is sad, or the main character is sad, and you are sad as well. Oh, this shouldn't have happened. Why? Because of the mirror neurons. And this is greater when it comes to empathy development. And the last one is dopamine release. Engaging in stories can trigger in the release of dopamine, especially when a story involves an emotional high point. Dopamine gets released and it enhances the ability to retain information, making the stories more memorable. Imagine I'm telling my story, there's this ups and downs, and then when the final conclusion comes after a climax, it's a happy ending. I've learned something. Even if I've failed, I've learned something. And that's a super high point for not just for me, but for people who are listening to it. And imagine the dopamine that gets released when I'm going to share the success of my story. When the dopamine gets released, stories become even more memorable. And these are five reasons or the neuroscience behind storytelling and why storytelling is powerful. Now let's look at the importance of storytelling. Now that we've established what storytelling is, let's discuss why it matters in the workplace. Storytelling isn't just for entertainment. but it can be used as a powerful tool that can transform the way we communicate, collaborate, and connect within the organization. Number one is the building connections at workplace. First and foremost, storytelling helps build connections. Let's say in a workplace, we often get caught up in datas and deadlines and tasks. But what really happens is that storytelling brings in that human element into our interactions. When we share stories, let's say a manager who is stuck up in very critical deadline have to talk to his team members. Instead of going ahead and talking about the dates in which they can release, imagine the project manager can tell a story. And this goes on that he will reveal his values, beliefs, experiences, and that could be fostering a very deep understanding among the trusted colleagues that he has. It could be that they are facing a challenge at in the project. Imagine sharing a personal challenge by the project manager in another project. This can encourage empathy and strengthen the relationship among the team members, right? So you no more are talking about the datas and deadlines and the revenues and the business that you're talking, but you're talking stories. You're talking your personal experiences, and people are going to connect with you much better. So this isn't about today's problem. The moment you start using storytelling to solve today's problem, first thing is that you start building connections with your team members. The second topic is about enhancing engagement. Another significant benefit is that storytelling enhances engagement. When we present information in a narrative format, we capture our audience's attention more effectively than just with the plain facts and figures. Research shows that people are more likely to remember information presented through stories. The 22 times, right? That we did see in the neuroscience. This is very crucial in team meetings, presentations, and even in training sessions that you would be taking. Let us remember that when the employees or people are emotionally engaged, they are likely to be more invested in the overall success of the team, of the project, or even organizations for that matter, right? So that's enhancing engagement through storytelling. The third significant benefit is retaining information. We did talk about the memory retention part, right? When it comes to storytelling. If you want your information to be retained by people, then storytelling is absolutely your go to for memory retention. Humans are wired to remember stories better than the abstract concepts that we all have, right? A well crafted story can help convey complex ideas and important messages, making it easier for team members to understand and grasp and remember. So, if you want to give away an information that your team members have to remember for a longer time, then your go to tool is storytelling. The fourth one is to inspire action. If you're someone who doesn't want your words to just be stuck in the room, and when people step out, they forget, right? If you're a leader who wants your stories, your information to be carried even longer than the meeting, then storytelling is another tool that will help you because storytelling can absolutely inspire action. Imagine a leader sharing his vision or goals through a story. What will happen? Telling a story, telling the vision without a story, and telling the vision through a story. What will motivate the teams to align better with the vision? Stories. Very simple, right? Stories can evoke emotions and drive people to take action, fostering a sense of purpose and direction for the leader's vision and mission. So, the fifth one is very important, which is to encourage innovation and creativity. Finally, storytelling encourages innovation and creativity by sharing stories of the past successes or even failures for that matter. teams can brainstorm new ideas without the fear of judgment. A safe storytelling environment nurtures creativity, collaboration, and leading to innovative solutions and growth. I recently came across storytelling very effectively. It should have been 10 days back, where we were interested by, we as in the peers of mine, were interested by a work by our boss. Our boss had asked us to create a 2025's goal plan. We went ahead and took the most recent goal plan and we copied and made some tweaks according to 2025. And guess what? She understood that we've made a cut copy paste. So she called all of us into a meeting room and she gave us a description, a tale of Robin Hood and how he had his ambition of helping his villagers. We all went through it as a story. We all read it very happily as a story. And most of us have known Robin Hood's story from our childhood. So we were very happy to read it. And then she went on to the board and started asking us a lot of questions, and we delved deeper into Robin Hood's ideas and what we had helped him devise a plan to help his villages and keep up his vision. And at the end, she said, this is exactly what I want all of you to do. So go back to the drawing board and write down what are the strengths and weakness and opportunities and threats. The SWOT analysis that we did on Robin Hood, go back to the drawing board and do it for your own teams. Come back and tell me what are your new goals. Let us not cut copy paste from 2024, but we will do our own SWOT analysis for 2025 and come up with the most effective goals for 2025. You see the difference rather than a leader walking in and telling us that you've made a mistake. Rather than that, she took us through a story of our childhood and helped us do a SWOT analysis on the very same story which we have read before bedtime. And that became very effective. And each of us went back to the drawing board and came up with some very good goals for 2025. And such is the power of storytelling, where it could encourage innovation and creativity, and we could be coming up with the most innovative solutions and growth. All right. With that, to sum up, storytelling in workplace builds connections, enhances engagement, improves information retention, inspires action, and most importantly, fosters innovation and creativity. By harnessing the power of storytelling, we can create absolutely amazing, collaborative, motivated, and innovative environment to work with. Now, let us move on and look at the most important part, the application, right? So far, we understood what is storytelling, why it is important, the statistics that talks about storytelling at workplace, the neuroscience behind it, and we also did talk about why storytelling at workplace. Now we'll step into the most important part, which is application. Let us discuss how we can apply storytelling in our workplace, whether it is in meetings, presentations, everyday interactions. Storytelling can enhance your communication and collaboration. The first topic is using storytelling in your presentation. One of the most impactful ways to apply storytelling is in your presentation. Instead of presenting dry data or facts, imagine those presentations, the PPTs, which has just data, no? Tabular column, column A, column B, column C, and then there's multiple rows to it. Those are pretty dry data and facts. Now imagine you weaving a story through your data. For example, when introducing a new project or a strategy, frame it as a journey. Start with the initial challenge that led to the project, then describe the obstacles faced and the problems that happened in the project, and then conclude with the anticipated results and benefits. This approach does not only give value and more appeal to your data on the presentation, but it also helps people understand the rationale behind your ideas. So it's important for you to quickly understand what is the story behind that data and to present it as simple. as it can be. I'd like to highlight a story by a person who had held the CSR initiatives for an organization. It was a town hall meeting. There were a lot of topics and a lot of presentations that went on. And you all know how much of importance the CSR takes place when it comes to the revenue and other strategic discussions of a company. What really happened? It was strategically placed just before lunchtime. Everybody were keen to go to lunch, and this person was standing between them and the lunch. And imagine CSR is going to have a lot of data, so many number of trees that we have planted, so many number of hours that we have put into CSR initiatives. Guess what this person did? He went onto stage and told that this year we have planted 36,000 plants. And he gave a twist. They were sitting, the meeting which was happening in the building was right across the Central Park. He said, look around. Can you take a sneak peek into the park that is right next to us? Can you see how many trees are there? He did a quick math before the meeting, and he went on to say that this particular park has 18,000 trees. And can you imagine? Our organization in the last 1 year has done twice planting of this particular, just like this park. This was a real good storytelling, making their data speak. And people were more engrossed in his presentation. And there were people after lunch who went up to the park and walked inside, and they were able to understand what kind of a CSR activity that they have made. And that is the power of storytelling. And this person went on again and again onto the stage, and he had absolute knack of storytelling. And I also heard that this person, within few years, he went on to become the CEO of the organization. It's a very true story. So it's important for us to have this knack of storytelling, and this can definitely enhance your own performance at work. The second thing is that start encouraging your team members to share their stories. Let's create a culture of storytelling. Because the moment you start telling stories, people are going to understand each other better. Because through stories, people will understand your value system and your experiences. And this makes people come more together as a team. What's the challenge you faced in similar projects? How did you overcome it? What you would do if you were put up in such a situation? Have you ever been in this situation? These are certain very simple questions that you can be asking your team members, where your team members can go on to share their stories, which will eventually will bring everyone together and strengthen the team bond. So the second topic is to encourage team members to share their own stories. Use storytelling for feedback and learning. Let us ask this question to ourselves. How many of us are comfortable sharing feedback? Not many of us, right? When we will have to share something which needs to be improved by our team member, we're not very comfortable as doing a presentation. So, how can we get out of this? Storytelling can be your tool. Storytelling can also be this powerful tool of giving and receiving feedback. Instead of presenting feedback as a list of do's and don'ts, how about you share it like a narrative? For instance, you might say, last quarter I worked with a client pitch that initially fell flat. Here's what I learned from that experience and how I adjusted my approach moving forward. This method presents a feedback in a more relatable context, making it easier for the others to understand and apply. Because when you tell a story from your experience, people will be able to relate it better and understand the feedback that you are giving to them, and they'll be more enthusiastic to take that feedback and apply in their own life, right? Fourth thing that I wanted to tell is start each meeting with a story. You could be sharing your client stories or your team story or a relevant shared experience that you can always use to kickstart your team meeting. Let's look at an example as to how you can do it. When a meeting goes on, start with a powerful, you know what happened yesterday? There was this person from customer team who had reached out to me for a support. When I looked at the clock, it was ticking 6:30. And I had to cut out a sorry figure and go tell that person that I am really sorry, but it's 6:30 and my team members are almost done for the day and they are logging off. That is when I found this particular person. Let's name it Gergo. He was working up late and went and asked him, and he was very enthusiastically jumping into it. And he sat till almost 9 o'clock and worked on this customer escalation. We all have families and our cutoff time, but this is what sets our team apart. This could be a very simple story from the previous day, but using it to start the meeting and saying that what really matters and what is that value that we are deriving from that experience to our meeting, and to talk about the culture of our meeting. This is a very effective way where we can set the team bonding and we can set the culture of the team. When you go on to do so, there would be more willing people to be trying to do and contribute multiple ways to the project. The fourth thing that I wanted to talk about is to build a story library. Now, when I talk about stories and stories and stories, where are the stories coming from? How do I remember those stories, right? That's when I'd like to highly recommend you to start building a story repository for yourself. Spend 1 minute a day or even 5 minutes a week capturing what happened over the last few days. These stories will be your valuable resources for your coming presentations, pitches, and that will bring your organization's character into life. The beauty of this is that the same story can be pivoted and used in multiple different purposes. When I write my story and look at what are the possible outcomes or lessons or moral of the story, right? That's what we've learned in our childhood. What are certain different moral of the stories that can be given to this particular story? And this can be repurposed into multiple different ways. Without this library, the process of documenting stories will become very, very difficult. So start writing your stories. It could be as simple as a two-sentence story. But what's important is to create that repository of stories so that it will come handy when you will have to convey information, convey decisions in your conversations at workplace. The next point is to acknowledge your coworkers. We all know that we can create strong connection by by giving the recognition that your peers or your team members are worth of. And this can enormously help us in building the employee engagement. So the key to do this is to weave storytellings into your workday. If you take time and effort to find out the stories from around your people, you can go on and use such stories in your conversations, in your business presentations. And who would not like to be the hero of your story? So the next thing is to go around and look out for those stories from your team members and start incorporating their stories as a part of your presentation. If you're doing a pitch, go on and share a story of your team member who've put in a lot of efforts into this particular project. That way, your client or customer will understand and respect your product much better than ever. Because now there is a human who is integrated as a part of your product project. Capture your own accomplishments. It's super important for you to ask yourself and write down once a month. If only I was to be remembered, what is it for? If you ask this question to yourself, what is that one thing that my boss can remember about my performance this month? And go on and write the stories that you have done. It could be very simple things, but it is the trick in how you can convey it through your storytelling. If you keep your stories ready, it is very easy for you to write or to tell your story when it is at the right time. Collecting these stories will not only improve your self worth and vision for your own work, it will also be your ready to go resource for your performance reviews, job interviews, and any situation where you need to convince someone to work with you. So make this as a ritual. At the end of every month, ask yourself, what is that one thing my boss can remember about my performance this month? What is that one thing that I want people to remember me for what I've done? And this story is absolutely your story that can be featured at multiple places and levels. And another place where I would like all of you to start using storytelling critically is when you have to put across complex information. Most days at work gives us opportunity to explain ideas. We are familiar with people, we are familiar with the concepts. But what we should also make ourselves familiar is how to use stories to explain complex information in the most relatable way as possible. I still remember the story told by my leadership coach. He went on to share his own story where his organization was facing a lot of troubles. And he, along with his board members, has to take one of the most important decision. They were not able to arrive at a very clear decision or the most final decision that they could ever make. So he went on to the stage to share the decision that the board has made to the entire organization. So instead of diving straight into the decision that they have made, he went on to say that a story of a person who got into the organization. He was asked very simple question during his interview, what is 8 into 8? We all know the answers. He went on to say 60. He survived to the interview, through the interview, and we all know what we do. The first thing, the moment we come out of interview or our exams, we go and check what is the answer. He went ahead and checked the answer and he knew that he was wrong. He went home with a huge disappointment that I made a mistake. But guess what? He got his offer letter, he joined, and he served his 3 months of probationary with much anticipation that he wants to ask this question as to why he got into the job. The very first day his probationary was done and he was made a permanent employee, he walked up to his manager and asked, "Hey, why did you choose me in first place? My answer was wrong." And the project manager said, "Yes, you were wrong. The answer was wrong, but you were the most closest to the answer that for the answer that we have asked a question for." The entire crowd burst into laughter. And then he took a brief pause and explained it that here is the decision of the organization. This may not be the most accurate solution that we're providing, but we know that this is one of the most closest to the solution that you would be expecting. And this is all we could do. You see, just after the story, when a message like that goes on, people will be more receptive to whatever the leader says. And to much anticipation, everybody accepted the decision made by the board members and they walked out happily. And that is when you will have to use storytelling as an effective tool when you will have to convey a complex information or the most toughest decision that you've taken. It just makes the job easier when you do that. The next application that I'd like to highlight is to tell your boss about your project and how many of us spend every single day on status updates. Status on the task, status on the project, status on the program. We are all status updating machines, isn't it? Now, how to bring in storytelling inside? Your direct manager has to understand and stand by your work, isn't it? That's very simple. Your work and your boss's understanding of it can affect your career. What is told in Harvard Business Review is that the boss wants to understand the intricacies and interrelationships with access to the details. And your boss wants their understanding to be actionable. So start crafting a story with a beginning that hooks your manager's attention, a middle that explores one or two important intricacies, and then you go on to the conclusion, which goes on to talk about what should we do next. And this is a quick, easier way to get your boss to understand the status of the project and to get their attention into what to do next. If you have to ask your management to support you, then storytelling is the best way. But what's important is that you craft your stories well. Now, let's dive into the next topic, which is introduction to the technique of storytelling. It's very simple. The first things that you are going to talk about is to know your audience. First and foremost, know your audience and tailor your story to suit their interests and values and what they want from you at that particular time. Ask yourself, what are the values that people hold? What challenges do they face? And what they care about? For example, if you're talking to a team of developers, relate your story to the technical challenges that they might be interested in. Because when your story aligns with their experience, it just makes it more impactful, right? So that is step number one, know your audience. Step number two is to start with the hook. Always start with the hook because your opening lines should do two things. One is to grab the attention of people. The second one is to pique interest and curiosity for people. If you set your starting right, people will sit through the story for the next couple of minutes. And that's the magic of starting with a hook. For instance, did you know that storytelling can improve employee engagement by 70%? You see, just telling out a fact will make people start thinking, really? How is it possible? How could I do it? What should I do to get that employee engagement spiked up by 70%? These are certain thoughts by people. And a strong hook sets the stage for your story and encourages your audience to focus what you will have to say. We are living in a world where people have the attention span as much as what a golden fish has. So that's why you have to have a strong starting so that people get hooked on to the story that you're going to share. So the third technique or the step is start using structures effectively. Effective stories follow a very clear structure, and I'd like to recommend a very classic three-part structure. The beginning, where you introduce your characters and set the scene, because characters are the heroes of your story. The second is middle or body of the story, where you present a conflict or a challenge that needs to be overcome. And the third thing is the end, where you have to give a resolution or the lessons learned. If you follow this, people will be understanding your story much better. And the fourth topic that I'd like you to think about is to start using vivid imagery. When you paint a picture with your words, is when people will be living in your story. People don't want to be here and watch or listen to your story. People would want to be a part of your story. If you want people to be a part of your story, then go ahead and use vivid imagery and descriptive language. Rather than saying, I was sitting on the beach or I was sitting in a conference room. Why don't you say that we gathered in a sunlit conference room, the aroma of fresh coffee wafting through the air, and the ideas just bounced off like beach balls? This type of descriptive engagement will make people be a part of your story and start being invested in your story. And the fifth and the last technique that I want to give you away is to be authentic in your storytelling, because people can understand if you're not being authentic. You can go ahead and share your vulnerabilities. I once struggled with presentation. Later, this is what I learned. I failed in a very big project. I disappointed my boss. So these are ways where you can stand up and be yourself and be authentic. And that's when people are going to remember. To wrap this up, remember these techniques, know your audience, start with a hook, use clear structure, use vivid imagery and descriptive language. And then five is to be authentic. And absolutely, you are going to improve your storytelling skills and make a lasting impact at your workplace. And go through all the product presentations that Steve Jobs has done. He has gone into include storytelling in almost all the ways possible, be it from the original iPhone launch, where he's framed how iPhone is a combination of three revolutionary products: the widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone that has a breakthrough of internet communication device. He went on to spin a lot of stories. The first time he had to launch the Airbook, MacBook Air launch, he started by pulling out that manila lope and tell them that, hey, this is an ultra thin profile of laptop that we have brought in. These are certain ways where he went on to bring in storytelling into the product, and there he went on a very bold product launch, which became year after year to be a part of our lives. All the Apple product that was launched. And that's how we resonate with Steve Jobs' storytelling during his product launches. It absolutely created excitement and consumer loyalty, making his presentations highly impactful and memorable. So, yes, we've covered the power of storytelling at workplace today. We've started by understanding what is storytelling, why it matters, and exploring the ability to build connections, enhance engagement, and improve information retention through storytelling. And we also dwelled into practical techniques for effective storytelling in our workplace. Please carry it forward and start using stories to be your effective techniques of coming across as a most impactful and a most memorable person in your presentations and meetings. Thank you. Any questions? Shabara, is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Kavina. It was really wonderful and and very motivating that we should rather use the stories and not just talk in general. So yeah, would you like to share your favorite story that you would have ever used and or you frequently use any of those?
Absolutely, Shabana. One of my favorite story is when I went to travel to China. It was just when the starting of COVID, 2019 November started this COVID, and I was there 2020 January. I flew to China. Why? Because one of our favorite customers, he was a very big customer in our complete customer portfolio. He was contributing to the majority of the share of revenues in our company, and it was a 3-year project. And I just stepped in as a project manager. Is when we got a very bad news. They said we are pulling off the project. We want you at our place, and we want to see the team which is working behind this product, and we all have to travel. And first day was that we all went in. The next day was a customer presentation where they were coming to our organization, to our company, and we will have to present as to how are we going to take shape of this product in the next few years. And what really happened was that instead of putting a presentation for future, we all started talking about what went wrong. Why are we in this place? And I was sitting there wondering, because I was a new project manager, I was sitting there wondering what's really happening. And there were a lot of talks about you did this wrong, if only we did this. And then that slowly transitioned into cultural expectations and cultural intricacies. And I was sitting there wondering, what are we doing? At one point, I realized that there has to be at least one person who will step up and tell that, hey, this is not the intention, we are here. We are deviating. And I understood that person has to be me. So I stood up strong and told them that, guys, what are we doing now? Shouldn't we be working for tomorrow's presentation? And this is not what the customer wants to hear. And all of a sudden, what was like a war room, pointing fingers at each other with the raising voices, raising eyebrows, pointing fingers, just calmed down, and people settled into their room and into the room, and they started talking sense, started putting data, started working on the presentation for tomorrow. And this goes on to talk about how communication is important. When you step in at the right time with the right words, it can just turn even a war room into a zen zone where people can sit and think and work. So this is a story which is very deep to my heart, and I use it everywhere, be, be it in newsletters, or I even use it in my presentations and meetings and when we sit and have coffee. So this is my favorite story, Shabana. And we took the last flight back to India just when they started shutting down the flights. We took the last flight and came back to India. And that project was a success. We all came back very happily
Awesome.
because the customer reinvested back into us.
Very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you for inspiring us. Yeah,
Thank you, Shabana. Thanks for that question.
thank you. And it was really a wonderful session. So we can wrap it now for today. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Kavina.
Meet
And
you all the next week then.
yeah,
Bye.